Hi everybody, my name is Jordi Marcé-Nogué and I want to introduce you to new methods to use in finite element models in evolutionary studies and their applications to the fossil record. Finite element analysis, FEA, is a general modeling technique that can be used to solve physical problems such as those of biomechanics by means of computers. Results derived from FEA can be of high interest in evolutionary studies. But we need to be aware that models are not literal representations of reality, and they are created based in simplifications. However, they can be very useful for our purpose. When we aim to develop an evolutionary study, we need to take into account that we will compare several models from different species. A comparative framework is the set of all the decisions we take in building our models to facilitate the comparison between them after solving. It means appropriate forces to reduce the effect of the size, orientation of the models, simplifications, and other decisions when meshing the models or applying the forces and boundary conditions. So, considering that everything here is consistent, we can analyze our results. In FEA, it is easy to compare the obtained maps of distribution of stress and strain qualitatively when we have few models. But when we have a broad number of models, we need to quantify. Usually, we can quantify the results using scalar values, like, for example, energy or mechanical advantage, or the results in homologous points, so we can select different points and evaluate the results between models, or we can use the peak values. But peak values can be very dangerous because they do not reflect realistic results, so it is something that we need to avoid. In the last years, I proposed 3 new ways, methods, or ideas that can be very useful. 1, the mesh-weighted values. 2, quasi-ideal meshes. And 3, the intervals method. These 3 new methods share the same rationale. Every element of the mesh has an associated value, so we can create hundreds of thousands of values of information. They are not affected by the size of the discretization, so it means that the result is not affected by the mesh. And finally, the results can be transformed into a vector or a matrix in which each species has its associated values. So I am providing the papers here where these methods are explained if you want to further reading this information. But how can we effectively use all this vast multivariate data? We can use in multivariate statistics and in machine learning. Multivariate statistics is the subdivision of statistics including the simultaneous observation and analysis of more than one outcome variable. In this example, we solved a biomechanical problem during chewing in mandibles. We are plotting the FEA results in box plots where we can compare average values or percentile between species. And we are plotting the results in a PCA where we can compare biomechanical behaviors between species. Thanks to these methods, we found a significant relationship between biomechanics and diet in a set of armadillos. On the other side, machine learning algorithms built a mathematical model based on sample data, known as training data, in order to make predictions or decisions without being explicitly programmed to perform the task. There are 2 kinds of algorithms. First one, unsupervised algorithms. These algorithms find structure in data, like, for example, clusters. And the other kind are supervised algorithms. They can infer a function from training data. We use machine learning in a massive set of FEA models. First, we obtain quantitative values from the previous described methods in extant species. Then, we use machine learning to classify the species in their ecological behaviors according to the FEA results we have. Finally, we use the unsupervised algorithms to include in our set the fossil models. So we can infer the ecological trait of the fossil model according to the FEA model results. In this other example, we studied the biomechanics of primate and hominins mandible. First, we solved several FEA models from a broad number of living species along the phylogeny. Using our quantitative methods, we found significant differences between hard and soft food eaters. It has sense, because hard food eaters resulted in more strong and stiff mandible to facilitate the breaking of hard food during chewing. After these first results, we included 12 FEA models from 8 different fossil species of hominins. In this case, as you can see in the box plots, the classification of these fossils in one of the two ecological categories was not successful using statistics. So we used machine learning algorithms to reorganize our data and try to classify the fossils. Using a supervector machine algorithm, we obtained with high accuracy a classification of the fossil models. Most of them were classified as soft food eaters. According to our classification, first, it means that in the hominin clade there were probably no hard food specialists, but we do not reject the possibility of them to chew harder items, if required as fallback option. A second, this classification agree with the last results obtained from microwear and isotopes in the same species. And finally, in the same work, we conducted the same analysis using morphometrics data, and we obtained the same results for the sake of the consistency of the models. Finally, how can we use all this vast multivariate data in evolutionary studies? In the same example, we included phylogeny in the dataset. So we calculated the phylogenetic signal using Parallel lambda, and we used our FEA data to estimate ancestral states. The last example I want to show is one derived from another publication where we studied the morphology and the biomechanics of the thallus in several New Old monkeys. In this case, we found covariation between biomechanical data and morphological data, and we used the FEA results to classify and infer the locomotion of different fossil species using the same approach explained previously. But in this case, we generated a figure that I think needs to be shown, because in this figure, we combine 4 data sources. 1, a PCA from the morphological data in 2 axes. 2, the biomechanical data in the last axis. 3, the ecological data in the colors of the points of the cloud. And 4, the phylogeny relating all the results between them. So I think that it is a good summary of what we can do using the new methods presented here in evolutionary studies. The conclusions we can extract of this presentation are: these methods are opening a new window to introduce biomechanical models into an evolutionary framework. Combining comparative FEA and evolutionary modeling can be a useful way to test phenotypic convergence. And finally, this approach can also be useful to test different evolutionary models that could provide insight about the evolutionary tempo and mode of biomechanically relevant traits. Thank you for attending this presentation. We want to use this last slide to acknowledge our collaborators and also our funding.